with that block under the sacrum. So as you come onto your back, we're going to start in a supported bridge. So just a low setting on the block. Pausing here, really feeling that triple S. So the back of the skull is on the mat, the shoulder blades, the sacrum is on the block. Bring your hands to the front of the pelvis, right at those pelvic points. Keep your sacrum touching the block. Alternate picking up 1 foot at a time. So knee comes just about over the hip. We're flexing the right hip, flexing the left hip, but trying to hold steady with that neutral pelvis. So sacrum is staying right on the block. We're not arching the lower back or rounding. So we're starting to integrate the core already. That is our theme today, integration of the core. Now bring both feet down, push down into the feet, use your glutes to lift off the block, and then place the block between your knees or your thighs, whatever width feels comfortable. So now it's between the legs as we're in bridge pose. And again, let's feel those 2 pelvic points draw in, tailbone reaching toward the heels. Give a little hug on the block. Take your right palm up. Let's pull the right fingertips back with the left, coming into that right wrist extension. Back of the neck is long. Switch hands, left palm up. Pull back, getting into that wrist stretch for the left side. Keep the glutes working. Glutes are part of the core. Bring your hands back to the pelvis. Keep hugging in on the block, using the glutes as you slowly lower down 1 vertebra at a time. Notice if your ribs are popping up and really try to hold that core integrated as you lower the rest of the way down. Block will come behind our head for core work. So just like when we have our hands behind our head, cupping the skull, we're going to do the same thing with the block. So we just have the block kind of right behind the skull, grabbing it like we have the hands clasped behind the head. So we'll take a big breath in. On an exhale, lift just enough that you get off the shoulder blades, gaze down toward the belly button. Now really feel your head leaning back into the block. Inhale to lower. Exhale, lift just enough that you get off the shoulder blades. Feel your head lean back into the block. Draw those pelvic points in. Inhale and lower. Exhale, lift up. Ribs contract back in. Head leans back into the block, staying off the shoulder blades. Now feel your sacrum right above your tailbone, staying on the ground as you lift the right heel up. That's the only thing that changes. Lower the right heel. Inhale, lower the head. Exhale, lift up off the shoulder blades. Lean your head back, gaze toward the belly button. Feel your sacrum stay on the ground as you lift the left heel. Lower the left heel, inhale and lower. Exhale, lift up. Chin is slightly towards your throat, head leans back into the block. Draw the pelvic points in, hold the sacrum in place as you lift the right heel. Lower the right heel, inhale and lower. One more time, integrating the core. Exhale, lift up. Lean your head back. Pull the belly button down. Keep the sacrum touching the ground as you lift the left heel. Stay off the shoulder blades. Lower the left heel. Inhale, lower the head down. Let's remove the block from behind the head. We'll head into quadruped. Take your block, put it right on the sacrum. So now the block is just right on the lower back above the tailbone, keeping that pelvis steady as we come to quadruped. Shoulders over the wrist, chin is slightly toward the throat, lift the front ribs up. We're trying to balance that block. Slide the right toes back. Now use your right glute to lift the right toes off the ground, keeping the block on the sacrum. Let's try some tiny hip extension pulses here. So we're using that right glute to pulse the hip, but we're trying to do it with a straight leg today. Usually we do this with a bent knee. So keep drawing those pelvic points in, lifting the front of the throat. Lower the right toes, slide the right knee back into your quadruped. Make any adjustments with the block, make sure it doesn't fall off. Shoulders over the wrist, lift the front ribs. Slide the left toes back without losing the block. Lift your belly up toward the block, lift the throat. Use that left glute to lift the toes off the ground. Tiny pulses here with that left hip. So we're pulsing that left glute. We're pulsing that left hip into extension, keeping the leg as straight as it feels comfortable. Noticing if we're dropping anywhere. Are we arching the back? Are our ribs drooping down? Is our head dropping down? Can we stay integrated in the core as we move this left hip? Good. Slide it back in, quadruped, remove the block. Let's cat-cow a couple times. You could also be on your fists to give the wrists a break after being on your hands in quadruped for a while. We're going to head right into a standing position at the top of the mat, continuing the reset with a sun salutation 1. So let's pause here, check in. We really want to move with that neutral spine, ears over the shoulders, shoulders over the ribs, ribs right over the pelvis. Reach the arms forward and up, shoulder blades lift up, tailbone reaches down. As you exhale, hinge at your hips, keep that neutral spine. Right foot steps back, lower the right knee, top of the foot. Inhale, lift up, arms reach, low lunge. Lift the shoulder blades. Firm that right glute. Hands to the ground. Quadruped, tuck the left toes, or tuck both toes. Exhale, use your core as you lift up into down dog. Keep the front ribs lifting up and away from the ground. Inhale. Exhale, use the core, lower back to your quadruped. Untuck the toes, right foot steps forward. Left knee stays down, low lunge. Checking with your posture, reach the arms up. Shoulder blades lift, firm that left glute. Draw the pelvic points in. Hands come forward or to your blocks. Left foot steps forward to meet the right. Bent knee forward fold. Push down into the feet, reach the arms forward and up. One more side. Exhale, hinge. Keep that neutral spine all the way forward. Left foot steps back. Lower the knee, not the toes this time. So keep those toes tucked under. Lift up. Check that nice neutral. Reach the arms up. Lift the shoulder blades. Make sure your ribs aren't popping forward. Hands to the ground for quadruped. Both toes tuck under. Exhale, use your core to lift the hips, down dog. Lift the front ribs, lift the hip creases. Inhale. Exhale, use the core as you lower back to your quadruped. Left foot steps through, keep those right toes tucked under. Lifting up, low lunge. Picture that broom behind your back. Arms come up, shoulder blades lift, feel the rib cage lift up. Keep the tailbone reaching down. Hands come forward or to your block. Step the right foot forward, bent knee forward folds. Push down into the feet, reach those arms forward and up. Starting our first sequence, we'll start in high lunge today. Exhale, hinge. Hands come to the thighs. Right foot steps back into a tilted crescent. So we're in that tilted high lunge. Left hip creases moving back, right glute is firm. Let's do left hand on the left thigh, right hand behind the head. Just like we did in our core work, lift your skull up into that hand. Right hand will lower onto a block at the highest setting. You can go lower, but I like to do the highest setting here. Right shoulder over the wrist, twisted crescent. Drag that right shoulder blade down the back. We'll keep the left hand right at the outer left hip. Push into that right big toe and firm the right glute. Lift your ribs in so they're not drooping toward that left thigh. Let's use the core as we lift up. Turn to the right. We'll side lunge. You're welcome to have the block in front of you. And we're just going to side lunge right and left. You can go really slow. You can pick up the pace a touch. But can we keep that neutral spine, neutral pelvis? So we're even working the core here to hold that spine neutral as we move side to side. We'll turn back to the front of the mat. We're heading into a quadruped. Come back onto hands and knees, shoulders over your wrists. If you have two blocks, you're welcome to put blocks under both hands here. Right or left leg slides back. Float that left foot up, three-legged quadruped, bend the knee. Let's try to circle that left hip. Remember that feeling of the block on your sacrum, so try not to move in the lower back as we circle that left hip both ways. Lower the knee, tuck the toes, downward dog. Lift the hips, lift the ribs up. Take a big breath here. Inhale, expanding into the ribs, front, side, and back. Exhale, feel the ribs contract back in. Let's walk it forward. Bent knee, forward folds. Pausing here, spine is long, huge bend in the knees. Let's slide the hands up the legs. Coming into our standing position. Inhale, hands slide down the thighs. Hip hinge, working on that triple flexion. Exhale, push into the feet. Use your glutes to lift back up, extending the hips. Inhale. Exhale. Notice what the ribs are doing as you move. Can you keep them in, not spilling forward? We'll start the second side. Hinge at the hips. Keep lifting the front ribs. Left foot steps back now into our tilted crescent. Right hip is moving back. Check that neutral pelvis. Right hand to the thigh, left hand behind the head. Lift your skull up into the hands. Left leg is active here. Tighten that left glute. We'll head into our twisted crescent. Use the block at any height under that left hand. Make sure the left shoulder's over that left wrist. We'll turn from the center of the chest, maybe an inch or so to the right. Let's keep the right hand on the outer right hip. You can gaze straight down or let your left ear release to your shoulder. Push into the feet. Use your core to lift and turn to the left. Side lunges. Hands can come to the hips, the thighs, whatever is helpful here to keep that triple S. So again, our goal is to stay integrated in the core so that we can move the hips without moving the pelvis. We can move the spine and keep it neutral. Turn to the front of your mat, quadruped. If you've got two blocks, you can have them under the hands here. Let's find our neutral spine in quadruped. Right leg slides back. Use the right glute to lift the right toes up. Bend the knee. Circle the hip both ways. Now notice what habits you have here. Are we dropping down the head? Are we really moving the pelvis and low back instead of just the hip? So just see where you can find a little bit more integration of the core. Lower down, tuck the toes, down dog. Lift the hips up, lift the rib cage up. Try to breathe into your back ribs. Pushing into the roots of the fingers. Huge bend in the knees. Let's walk it forward. Coming to the top of the mat, long spine. Push into the feet, reach the arms forward and up. We'll do our one round of sun salutation A a little differently today. Hinge forward. Step back to your plank. Knees can be up or down. Let's find that neutral here. Neutral neck, scapula, pelvis, glutes are active. We'll tap the knees down into a modified plank. Relift the throat. One tiny little elbow bend. Straighten the arms. Lift into down dog. So walk the feet in. Weight stays in the hands and the arms as we lift the hip creases up for down dog. Take a breath here. Inhaling front, side, and back. Starting our second sequence here, let's lower the knees into quadruped. Find that neutral, lift the ribs, integrate the core so that we can slide the left leg back. Use that left glute to float the toes up, just like we did in the reset. Let's pulse this left leg. So some straight leg glute pulses or hip extensions. Keep lifting the belly, lifting the front ribs. Slide that left knee in. We're coming into modified side plank. So slide it in pretty close to the hand. Right foot steps back. Drag that left shoulder blade down the back like you're trying to put it in your back pocket. You can keep right hand on the right hip, or if you can stay really steady here with the arm up, maybe let's challenge that core stability, backstroke your right arm. Couple more backstrokes here if that's what you're doing. Right hand to the outer right hip. Let's lift that right foot off the ground. Step it forward toward the front of the mat. Lift all the way up off that left knee. Continue to turn to the left. We're facing the side of the mat. Goddess squat, hips externally rotated. You can have your hands at the front and back of the pelvis. They can be at your triple S. Let's pulse here. Working the hips, working the glutes. Keeping that neutral spine. So can we keep the spine neutral as we move the hips? Can we keep that core integrated to support us? Turning to the back of the mat, low lunge, right knee lowers. Keep the toes tucked. Left hand to the sacrum, right arm up. So we're in a low lunge facing the back of the mat. The left leg is forward. Firm that right glute, lift that right shoulder blade up. Hands come down for quadruped. Starting the second side here, facing the back of the mat, so a little bit different. Let's extend the right leg back. Find your neutral spine. Float the right leg up. Straight leg pulses. Notice if the head's dropping. If you're really just putting your weight into one arm. So find those compensations. We're keeping that beginner's mindset today. Modified side plank, right knee slides in. Left foot steps back. Drag the right shoulder blade down the back. Zipper the front body up. Left arm can come up. You can even backstroke it. But let's hold really strong in that right shoulder and shoulder blade and that right hip. Left hand to the left hip. Float the left leg up. We're stepping toward the back of the mat. Lift off that right knee. Continue to turn to the right. Goddess squat. Toes out, heels in, any amount. Check that triple S. Let's pulse here in our squat. Checking in with that 360 breath. We get to step it right to the front of the mat now. If you need to take a sip of water, we're about to start the stream. So we're almost done. Let's check in with our neutral posture, keeping that core integrated, the spine neutral. Starting with our hip hinges, hands slide down the legs. Hips move back, torso comes forward. Push into the feet, rising up. So we're using our core here to keep the spine neutral. There's a lot going on. We're trying not to droop the ribs down or round the back. So picture doing this hip hinge with that broom taped behind your back. Pausing that hip hinge. Lift the ribs up and away from the thighs. Right foot steps back. Tilted crescent. Let's bring both hands to that left thigh. So our torso's tilting forward here. Right glute stays nice and firm. Lifting the front of the throat. Good. Right arm forward. Right arm reaches toward the ear. Left arm reaches back. Can we still keep that core integrated? So not rounding the back, not arching the back. Nice and strong. Right hand comes to a block for that twisted crescent. Any size, maybe the highest, shoulder over the wrist. Left hip crease moves back. Turn from the center of the chest, maybe an inch or two left. Keep that right leg and glute firm. Left hand can stay on the hip like last time, or you can float the left arm up. Lift the ribs. Turn to the side of the mat. So we're using our core to lift up. Turn to the right. Side lunges. Of course, you can use blocks under your hands. Hands can come to your thighs. Hands can come to that triple S. But let's make sure we're keeping that core integrated. Lifting the front ribs, lifting the throat. Moving the hips side to side, but holding that steady pelvis. Turn to the front of the mat for quadruped. Again, if you've got two blocks, you're welcome to put them both under your hands. Find your neutral quadruped. Chin to the throat, lift the ribs. Slide the left leg back. Lift the belly up toward the sacrum. Use your left glute to float the left leg up. This is going to be harder. Let's see if we can do some straight leg hip circles here instead of the bent knee hip circles. So these are going to be so small. We're trying not to move anywhere else. So notice if the chest is moving, or if the low back or the low belly is moving, make it smaller. Slide that left knee in, modified side plank. Right foot steps back. Right arm can float up. Right leg can float up. Integrate the core. Keep that neutral spine. Let's transition back to quadruped. So you can do it right from here. You can lower foot, you can lower hand, and then turn yourself. Head to that three-legged quadruped, left leg back. Can we stay integrated through this transition? Slide the left knee in, modified side plank. We're going to do this a couple times. Right foot steps back. Right arm can float. You can even float that right leg. Keep your core integrated. Go back to that three-legged quadruped. Right knee lowers for quadruped. Left leg back. One more time. Keep that neutral spine. Slide the left knee in. Modified side plank. Right foot steps back. Float if you'd like. Neutral spine. Last time, three-legged quadruped. Left leg back. Lift the throat, lift the belly. Step your left foot forward toward the front of the mat. Let's lift off that right knee. Turn right, so we're facing the side of the mat. Come to that squat. Feel your triple S here. Picture that broom behind you. Let's bring the arms out wide. You can pulse the arms. You can pulse the legs. You can pulse both. But let's make sure we're not popping the ribs forward. So we're not moving the chest forward. We've kept the front body nice and zippered up. Couple more pulses. Make sure you're not holding your breath. Turn to the front of your mat. We're going to be on that left leg. Start in your tilted crescent. So tilt it forward without drooping the ribs. You can have right hand on the left thigh if that feels a little more stable. Tap the right toes forward. Rise up. Flex the right hip. Float the thigh. Hold that left glute strong. Tap it down. Tilted crescent. Right toes come back. Right hand comes to the left thigh. Lift the belly. Lift the ribs. Tap the right toes forward toward the left. Rise up. Stay on that left leg. Flex the right hip. Thigh floats up. Tap it down. Tilted crescent. We're going to keep going. You have the option to make it more challenging. You can skip the tap. Go right to that hip flexion. Maybe skip the tap or head to a bent knee airplane instead. One more time. Push down into that left foot. Tap or don't tap. Flex the hip. Tap or don't tap. Tilted crescent or bent knee airplane. Pause wherever you end up. Can you integrate the core a little bit more to hold that neutral spine? Step your right foot, warrior two. Pausing here, check that that pelvic bowl is upright. Drawing the pelvic points in, we'll reverse it. It's a small movement, we're just moving in the rib cage. Little thoracic rotation. Warrior two. Variation, forearm to the hip or thigh. Arm up and over. Warrior two, let's step it forward for the second side. Starting with our hip hinges. Slide the hands down. Inhale. Exhale, rise up. So as we inhale, we're working the glutes on the way down. They're lengthening, but that's a type of contraction. And then as we exhale and lift back up, they're tightening. So they're contracting to get us back up and extend the hips. So glutes are working on the way down and up. We're working that core to keep the spine neutral. Holding that feeling of the broom behind our back. On the next hip hinge, let's pause so we can set up for that tilted crescent. Hinging here, find that triple S. Right toes come back, tilted crescent. Let's bring hand to opposite thigh. Right glute is really active, so we're not just hanging out here. Firm that right glute, push down into that right big toe. Switch sides, we already did this side, sorry. Left toes come back. Tilted crescent, lift the ribs. Let's really work that right glute. Good, if you're ready to challenge the core a little bit more, you can go from hands to that right thigh, to left arm forward toward the left ear, or right arm back. But let's make sure we're not arching the back here, so lift the ribs, check what the tailbone is doing. Twisted crescent, left hand to a block. Right hip crease moves back. Drag that left shoulder blade down the back, kind of like a modified side plank. You can keep the right hand on the hip or float that right arm up. But don't look up, either just left ear to the shoulder, release, or gaze straight down toward that right foot. Lift the belly, lift the ribs away from that right thigh. Let's use the core to lift and turn to the left. Side lunges. Anything with your hands. You can always do triple S, skull and sacrum. You can have your hands on the front ribs, hands at the pelvis. Your choice. Turn it back to the front of the mat for quadruped. Hands can be on blocks or not. Let's find that neutral just like we would for a plank. Neck, shoulder blade, and pelvis. Right toe slide back. Lift the belly as if you had that block on your sacrum. Use the glute to float the right leg up without changing the neck, the chest, the shoulders, the low back. Let's try to circle that right leg. These are tiny circles. Try to press evenly into both arms. Right modified side plank is where we're heading. Right knee slides in. Left foot steps back. Drag that right shoulder blade down the back. Pull the belly back toward the sacrum. Left arm can come up. Left leg can float up, but stay integrated in the core. Try not to make any compensations. Heading back to that three-legged quadruped. Left hand, left knee back down. Right leg extends back, three-legged quadruped. Keep the core integrated. Modified side plank, right knee slides in. Left foot steps back. It can be on or off the ground. Find that triple S here. Keep the core working as you transition back to that three-legged quadruped. Do it in stages, whatever works for you. Find your triple S in that three-legged quadruped. One more time. Right knee down. Left foot steps back. Modified side plank. Three-legged quadruped. Right leg back. Now we step the right foot forward toward the front of the mat. Turn to the left, coming into that goddess squat again. So knees and toes are tracking the same direction. Arms can be out, you can pulse the legs, you can pulse everything, but really pay attention to that triple S. Notice if you're kind of tipping forward here or popping the ribs, hold that core integrated so that the spine and the pelvis can stay neutral. We'll turn to the front of the mat, starting in that tilted crescent. So here's that balance, tilting it forward. You can start with the left hand on the right thigh. Now lift the belly, lift the ribs. Tap the left toes forward, staying on that right leg, rise to stand. Work that right glute. Any amount, left thigh floats, we flex the left hip. Tap it back down, tilted crescent, left toes come back. Right hip crease moves back. Tap it forward. Rise up. Float the thigh. Flex the left hip. Work that right glute. Tap it down. tilted lunge. So we're gonna keep going. Find your option. You can keep the taps. You can skip the taps. You can make it a bent knee airplane instead, floating the left toes off the ground, as long as we can keep that form. Can we stay integrated in the core so that the core can support us from one movement to the next? We're not losing that integration as we transition from movement to movement. Next time that left leg is back, we'll pause either in that tilted lunge or that bent knee airplane. Almost done. Lift the ribs. Left foot steps back, open for warrior two. Now hold that pelvic bowl still. Tailbone stays reaching down. Reverse it. We're just side bending toward that left leg. Breathe into the right side of the torso. Warrior two. Variation, forearm to the hip or thigh, left arm up and over, push down into that left foot. Warrior two. Let's windmill back to quadruped, and we'll cat-cow. Any type of cat-cow here. You can make circles. You can do little swivels side to side. You can even take a quick child's pose, whatever you need as we ready to finish up. Let's come onto our backs. We'll end with a nice thoracic rotation. So come onto your back, knees bent, roll to your left side. Arms reach out. Inhale, open the right arm up and back, rotating through the mid and upper back. Exhaling it back over. Move at your own pace. We'll do a couple little rotations here. The goal is to just move around the rib cage. So keep that right hip stacked on top of the left. So we're not twisting here in the lumbar spine. Just mid and upper back. Let's switch sides, roll to your right side. Same setup. Arms reach out, inhale that left arm back. So rotating the thoracic spine to the left, inhaling it back over. Couple more times, moving at your own pace. As you come onto your back, you can hug the knees in, maybe take a little rock side to side or up and down, maybe a quick happy baby, whatever you need. And then go ahead and make your way into a seated position. As you sit, we'll close the eyes. Hands can rest somewhere on the lap or maybe on your rib cage. Let's take a few more of those big 360 breaths together, inhaling into the front side and back of the ribs. As you fully exhale, feel how the ribs naturally contract back in toward the body. Let's do that one more time. Inhale, feel that full expansion. Exhale it out. Ribs just gently contract back in. Take a moment to thank yourself for your practice today. Sending one grateful thought out into the universe. Thank you for practicing with me today.